All right, well, we are continuing our study through Proverbs, this wisdom book, and now we are actually in the Proverbs. And remember, chapters 1 through 9 set the stage for wisdom literature and introduce the themes, and now we're in those themes. And so, I'm suggesting to you 6 major themes from the book of Proverbs, and we are studying the most pervasive one of those first, and that is the way that we use our speech. So last week we talked about, we introduced this concept, and we said, we'll do a little bit of trivia. We said that this topic, it's kind of a double-pronged fork, all right? This topic, or speech in Proverbs, can be defined with 2 primary concerns. Remember what those 2 primary factors are? They're both Q words, remember? Quality and quantity. Proverbs, wisdom speech is primarily concerned with the quality of our speech, that is what we say, and then the quantity of our speech, that is how much we say. And so last week we dealt a good bit with the quantity of our speech, and tonight we'll talk about the quality of it. And so, of course, last week we with some of the verses that we read, or we studied, it leans into the quality of our speech a little bit. But tonight we're really going to be dealing with sins of our speech, and not just the negative, but also the positive. How should we talk? Last week we got the warning repeatedly to probably just in general we should say less, to count our words. Don't feel the need to fill every conversation with words, to fill every silence with words. There's probably wisdom in every aspect of our life to just saying less. And then so tonight we're going to deal with the actually what we say and how we say it. So there is the content of our speech and the tone of our speech. We'll do what we did last week. We'll just go through as many verses as we can, and we'll try to bring out various contexts for application. Have you ever been, after a long, hot summer's day of hard work, or at any point during a hard day of hard work, you've been really thirsty, and you've been out in the sun, and the whole time you're working, you've drained the water bottle dry because it's hot, and you've been out working, and you just need some water. And so you finally get to that point where you get that refreshing drink of cold water. And you know in that moment that warm water would quench your thirst, but it wouldn't be satisfying. You know that liquid itself wouldn't just quench your thirst. So if you're really thirsty for water, you shouldn't go chug a Mountain Dew. Someone tell Kevin. He's not here. But someone tell Kevin, all right? You actually need the right thing at the right time to address the right problem. And this idea of life-giving speech is the first and founding analogy in relation to speech in Proverbs. And I'll show you that in Proverbs chapter 10. Now remember, chapter 10, we use this analogy, 1 through 9 is the long runway. Chapter 10 in Proverbs is when the plane begins to lift off, and now we're flying through wisdom literature. These are actually the Proverbs, so it's the end of the introduction. And now we're going to begin to flesh out these themes. So chapter 10 is that main hinging point. Look with me at chapter 10 and verse 11. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. So positive. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. And so I'm going to suggest that all of our understanding of wise speech be kind of seen within this founding analogy. When you speak, are you giving life to a needy soul? Are you giving the right words at the right time, in the right way? Let's pray. We'll begin to work through this concept together. Father, we thank you so much for the truth of your word. I ask that you would make us wiser from it. Give us humility of heart as we receive it now. Help us not to think that this is for somebody else, but this is for us. Help us to not resist, but to receive with meekness the engrafted word. Father, we all need this study. And so give us the grace to apply it and the submission to your Spirit to live it out. And we ask these things through Jesus. Amen. All right, so let's just dig into this analogy a tiny bit, and then we'll begin to work through these verses. We will not, I told you a few weeks ago, really I would love to cover every verse within these topics. That's probably just overly ambitious, but we'll get to as many as we can with the time that we have. So let's press into this analogy. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. So the idea is that this fountain is one that's actually, it's from the earth. It's not like it's not like the fountain at the mall or the fountain that you might, put in your backyard. It's not like a fountain that, a manor house might have somewhere. It's a spring. It's the idea that the water is coming from somewhere in the earth. There's a well, there's a reserve there, and it's flowing from that reserve. And so it's rooted in something, and it's giving life. So that reserve actually provides resource for the needy, for those that are around it. It's like a crystal, cool spring that gives life. The mouth of the righteous is life-giving. You've heard me use that terminology, life-giving. I hope you have. It's a terminology we use a lot in our family. It's terminology that I try to use pastorally, because the way that we understand the Christian life is the Christian life is fundamentally life-giving. As we have been given life, so we give life. We do not detract from life. We do not rob life. We do not make life a frustration or a discouragement for others. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. Now, be careful when you hear me say that you don't only hear that as the mouth of the righteous says happy things to people all the time. Because sometimes what one needs in order for the reserve of the fountain of life to really speak righteousness is a loving, kind word that isn't one that just affirms. How many of you, I'm speaking largely to married people here, how many of you at one point in your life can think of a time in your marriage when you knew you were having a fight and you were wrong about it? You knew you were wrong about it. No? Todd's like, never happens to me. Yeah, it's like you know you're wrong about it, but you're digging in, you're planting your feet, you're not going to be wrong about it. And what's worse is when your spouse really is taking the high ground. And they're being way godlier than you. And now you're resentful because you're wrong, and they're being godlier than you. And that fountain is actually giving life in a way that you don't want to receive it, but you know you need to. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. It's life-giving. Do you speak life-giving words? Do you speak life-giving words? What about with those with whom you disagree or you don't understand? Can you communicate your feelings and your understandings in such a way that is honest, that addresses the concern, and that does not detract from the individual? Or, in addressing your concern, do you default to addressing character? The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. And there are a number of contexts in which we can see this. When you're parenting and you're upset with that child or you're frustrated with that child, and maybe it's legitimate, maybe the sin is to such an extent that you should be upset or you should be frustrated with the situation, do you address the problem or do you attack the person? Do you address the problem or attack the person? Can you rightfully distinguish between your understanding of the situation and what you don't like about that individual or your perceptions of that individual? The mouth, but antithetical parallelism, remember we've used that term, it presents a contrast. This is a favorite strategy of Solomon, the antithetical parallelism. But the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. Now, this is an interesting verse because mouths are used for speaking, are they not? The mouth of the wicked conceals violence. So the idea is that the mouth of the wicked contributes dishonesty and hides information or conceals a situation to an extent that it perpetuates wickedness. Or you could just put it this way, it's calculated deception. The mouth of the wicked conceals violence. So righteous speech brings life, wicked speech detracts from it. We're in chapter 10, look with me, verse 20. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, but the heart of the wicked is of little worth. Now, this is an interesting passage as well. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, so it is beautiful, and it adds beauty. Okay? It is beautiful, and it adds beauty. But the heart of the wicked is of little worth. So, understanding the speech in line 1 is connected to understanding the heart in line 2. Do you see that? This is what Jesus himself means when he says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The writer, Solomon, understands these concepts to go together. The mouth of the tongue of the righteous is beautiful and gives beauty, but the heart of the wicked is worthless. Righteous words maintain value, and they give value, and they contribute value. But the heart of the wicked and the words that follow only contribute vanity. They don't actually give value. They are of little worth. They don't add anything worth saying to the conversation, to maybe use our mom's terminology, right? If you have anything worth saying, don't say it. Or my mom's terminology. We're still in chapter 10. The mouth of the righteous, this is verse 31, 32, brings forth. There's that idea of the spring again. Brings forth wisdom. But the perverse tongue will be cut off. The lips of the righteous know what is acceptable, but the mouth of the wicked what is perverse. So the mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom. Why? Because it's in the well of the righteous. It's in the reserve of the righteous that righteous words or that wise words are pulled. So the mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom, but the perverse or broken, remember I said recently, I don't remember when I said it, I think it was last week, that this perverse doesn't just have the connotation of sexual perversity. It's anything that's broken or warped or out of character or out of place. Broken, warped, out of place. The lips of the righteous know is acceptable. The mouth of the wicked we cut off. What is perverse? So the lips of the righteous know is acceptable. This is similar to the word appropriate. They know what needs to be said, when it needs to be said, and how it needs to be said. And this is where, if we couple this concept with the idea of quantity from last week, not just quality, but if the wise person knows what needs to be said, when it needs to be said, and how it needs to be said, I think if the quantity wisdom has made its way into our heart, we would find that maybe fewer things need said more often. Does that make sense? We don't need to say as much. We could approach a situation and say, I don't need to say a lot here. I don't. This situation does not need me. This conversation does not. What value would I actually add? Well, if I say something, then I have. Why do we have to say anything? Maybe the situation is sufficient in its value, and it doesn't need us. And of course, it takes wisdom to determine when that is, and we can pray for that wisdom. We can ask the Lord's discernment for that, but we shouldn't just always assume that what we need to do is say something. Now flip over with me to chapter 12. We'll continue to work our way through these texts. Chapter 12. There is one whose rash words, that's words that are without control, are like sword thrusts. But the tongue of the wise brings healing. Okay, now the imagery here, the poetry in verse 12 is specific. So this is an ancient short sword. It's not the idea of a broadsword used for hacking and taking big cuts at people. It's the idea of a short sword that was used for quick, devastating movements. Repeated, devastating movements. There is one whose words, rash words, are like sword thrusts. Now, sword thrusts don't just hurt. They kill. Now, they do hurt. Chapter 12, verse 18. They do hurt, but they kill. Too many of them. Too many sword thrusts. Detracts from life to the extent that it might be exterminated. Contrast, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Do your words give life or take it? Do they cause pain or preservation? That next time conflict arises, do you have to send the text message? You have to say the thing? There's no pause between what bothers you and your response in addressing it with that person? And listen, this deals more than with just what is being said, but how it is being said. Because you can say things that are objectively good with the intent to cause pain. And so can I. You can say things that are objectively good and may even be right with a completely sinful motive. And it detracts from life. It doesn't bring healing. Proverbs 12, verse 14, from the fruit of his mouth is a man satisfied with good, and the work of a man's hand comes back to him. From the fruit of his mouth is a man satisfied with good. Good words bring pleasure, not just to the receiver, but to the speaker, because they don't know the dangerous consequences of evil words. Proverbs 15, verse 1, this is probably one that you know. When I do marriage counseling, and we're in the communication section, because, I know some people have problems with communication. I know you don't, but some people have communication problems in their marriage, right? I go to Proverbs 15. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Now, remember, one of the things about Solomon is that he's going to speak in generalities, not absolutes. He's going to give principles, not promises. Because there may have been a time in your life when you gave a soft answer to someone and you genuinely had a godly response, and it did not calm them down. Now, this verse doesn't say they will immediately calm down the first time you give them a gentle answer. It's not what it says. It's providing for us a principle, a concept that generally wins out. Have you ever, maybe in a marital conflict or conflict with one of your kids, you said something that was so outside the tone, it was jarring, and it completely changed the whole situation? So you're in an argument, you're in a conflict, and you're amped up, and you're going, and their response just doesn't match yours. But you had gotten ready to have this, and you're still amped up, but they're just giving soft answers. Now, what should happen in that situation is now we have two people who want to give life, and what should happen is the one who is wrathful should immediately pause. Say, thank you for that response. Will you forgive me? That's what should happen. How many times does it not go that way? Soft answer turns away wrath. And this is true with every demographic. It's true of your parenting. It's true of your marriage. It's true of the people that you work with. Just maintain a gentle, gracious tone with them. Love and gentleness and grace provide a category that anger doesn't know what to do with. It's like we have to figure out how we're going to be angry around this love. And when that happens, you are automatically working from a field of grace. Chapter 15, verse 4, a gentle tongue, here it is, tree of life. It speaks life. It gives life. But perverseness in it breaks the spirit. Perverseness in it breaks the spirit. The Lord used this exact verse, I guess it would have been about probably 8 months ago, with me in relation to parenting my son. Because truly, I'm not a shouter at my kids. I don't struggle that way. I have shouted at my kids. I think you know what I mean. I'm not a screamer. I'm not a yeller. There we go. And there were times, especially in parenting my son, because, something happens when a boy wants to be like daddy. And it's a good thing, and it can be a hard thing. Because they want to be a man, sometimes a little too young. I'll never forget one of my favorite stories of Leighton, window into his soul. One of my favorite stories of Leighton is we were wrestling, and sometimes I let him win. But most of the time I don't. We were wrestling, and I didn't let him win. And he didn't say anything for a minute, and then he stood up, started pounding his chest like a gorilla, and goes, "You're trying to be stronger than me." It's like, son, I am stronger than you. You're a boy, and I'm a man. And he goes, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "But it's my job to help you grow from being a boy to being a man." And I said, what boys do is they get upset when they lose. That's what boys do. But anyway, by the way, that was like 2 years ago. So 4-year-old already having, masculine rivalry with dad. It's like, I can't wait till he's 16. Oh boy. But the Lord used this verse to rebuke me a while ago. Because in responding to my son, I thought what I needed to do was always be stronger than him. So I would have a strong tone. I would accidentally put him down. And I got into the habit of this because, as parents, we get into bad habits. We start doing the same thing because we think it's the right thing. We just keep doing it, we keep doing it, we keep doing it. And finally, I realized that maybe I'm the problem. Maybe he's matching my energy. And so I made a concerted effort to just slow down, be meek, and be gentle. And it caused me to realize that a gentle tongue is not just what you say, it's a culture that you create. And I am continually fighting for that culture because you know what I've noticed? And moms of girls, I'm sure you would say the same. You know what I've noticed? When I'm godly, my son is godlier. And when I am gentle, my son is gentler. Why? Because we're teaching them to pull from a different well. And if we're not teaching them to pull from the well of godliness, from what well are they going to pull? Flesh. Self. And so may God, as parents and as spouses, continually move us to a gentle tongue which provides safety, it provides security, it gives life, it's resource, so that we're not breaking the Spirit. (15:23) To make an apt answer is a joy to a man. In my opinion, the man is receiving the joy. It's the one listening, not the one speaking. To make an apt answer is a joy to a man. And a word in season, how good it is. The word at the right time in the right way. It provides this resource, this breath of fresh air. It provides a deflate, a place where we feel like there's safety in the words that are being spoken to us. To make an apt answer is a joy to a man. It's just a word of encouragement at the right time. And loved ones, I have made the alternative mistake too many times where you try to say the right thing and you try to give an apt answer at the right time and I just didn't read the room right, and what I should have done was pray that I would notice the right time. And I will say in my short life, one of the things I've learned is the right time is not usually immediately. Write one draft of the email before you send it. And then look over it again. And then maybe write another draft. Before you have the conflict that you've been thinking about all day with your spouse, maybe go, should I talk about this tomorrow? Just pray that I would have joy today. Lord, help me have joy when I go home. Not think about this unless I have to. And if I have to bring it up in the right way. Let me commit to praying about this for a night. And then you might get to the next day and go, I don't even know why that bothered me. Maybe I didn't even need to broach this at all. Maybe I was just bothered because I was bothered. Or hungry, The word in season, at the right time. How good it is. 16:21, the wise of heart is called discerning. And I love this verse. Sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. Other translations have the idea of strengthen the appeal. A wise of heart is called discerning, and sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. Do we live in a day that understands this? Like, how does the culture engage? Do they get this? Not at all. I mean, the culture that we live in today is if I can be funnier, snarkier, louder, then maybe people will listen to me. And maybe that's leaked into how we think that we should talk to each other. I have to help them see it whose way? My way. In order to do that, I have to bring about so many angles and let them know how it made me feel. And they have to feel what I felt and see it the way that I see it. And if they don't, then they're wrong, or they're ungodly, or they're unloving. Sweetness of speech increases persuasiveness. So next time you think that conversation really needs to come up with your spouse, remember Proverbs 16:21 and just go, how sweet do I plan to be? What's my plan for sweetness? How am I going to guard this in myself and in my own heart? It's like I said last week, if you've won an argument with your spouse, what have you really won? You've probably lost the things that are more important. If you've broken the spirit of your child but caused them to agree with your argumentation, what have you really won? If someone understands our perspective but feels pain in the process, was our understanding really worth that? Or their understanding really worth that? (16:24) Gracious words are like a honeycomb, sweetness to the soul and health to the body. Now, this is an analogy you'll understand well. I mean, how many of you still do something with honey for its health benefits? It's the idea that it's good and it provides health. They hadn't figured out how to make a bunch of fake sugars that are really bad for you at this time in history. So honey was a bigger deal than sometimes we treat honey like it's an option. Oh, that would be good for me. I should drink honey. Like honey was a big deal then, and it was a way that they lived their life, and it was a way that they sweetened things, and they knew its health benefits, and it had a pleasing effect. Gracious words are like honeycomb. They build up. They're so encouraging. It causes a smile in your heart and on your face and your countenance, and sweetness to the soul and health to the body. I listened to a podcast once, and the guy being interviewed was a professional dog trainer, and he went into the statistics about what he does versus how they teach animals to fight. And he talks about the power of training dogs even with human speech. Even in what you say and in how you say it, that even animals pick up on this. And then he went into the duration of their life. Like, if you treat an animal well, they live longer. If you treat an animal kindly, they live longer. And he said, versus teaching animals to fight, the thing that they make harsh first is how they address the dog, what they do with how they talk to the dog. It's like people naturally understand, if you want to make something mean, be mean to it. If you want to give life, use your words in a life-giving way. We get that. We're going to wrap up. I'm going to give you two more verses, and there's so many more. I mean, so many more. Maybe I'll just give you the verse list, and you can do this study for yourself. And the reason I want to give this verse is because it gives the opposite perspective, not just the speaker, but the listener. And then I want to conclude to go back to the original analogy so that you can see how Solomon continues to use this theme. Proverbs 17 verse 4, an evildoer listens to wicked lips, and a liar gives ear to a mischievous tongue. So where does it wait, even in a verse about sinning with our mouth? You see that? Even in a verse about sinning with our lips, where does it weight the sin in 17:4? With the what? The speaker or the listener? The listener. An evildoer listens to wicked lips, and a liar gives ear. So in a verse about the wickedness of lips, it's like we're being reminded, by the way, you don't just have to be the one using your lips wickedly to be involved in verbal wickedness. Just give your ear to them. And in my experience, and in probably yours, those who love to use their lips mischievously also like to be around and listen to those who like to use their lips mischievously. Or to put it another way, birds of a feather tend to gossip together. They go together. And let me just warn you, in the context of the church, the way that I think that this goes, it's usually spiritualized. It's not outright wickedness. It's just, have you noticed so-and-so? I just don't understand them. I'm concerned for them. And what's framed as a spiritual concern actually just becomes gossip. It's just an opportunity for people to express sinfully rather than truly spiritually. So verbal wickedness isn't only concerned with the speaker, but the listener. And then just to bring this full circle, 18 verse 4, the words of a wise man's mouth are deep waters. They're deep waters. There's a deep reserve of wisdom there. And it's pulling up that reserve, and it's ministering life. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. It's refreshing those around it. So let me just ask you, as your speech pours out, are others being encouraged by its flow? Are you giving life that comes from a reserve of grace and wisdom and righteousness? Do people cringe when they see your name in the text thread? Are they concerned when the phone goes off because you know what it's going to be? Or are you the kind of person that people delight to bring their concerns to you because they know that they'll get truth? They won't just get an ear to affirm. They'll be encouraged. You'll hear a perspective that's worth hearing. It gives life. May we all endeavor to be the kind of person that's not known for running our mouth with a few good things sprinkled in, but people who are discerning with our speech so that when our speech is needed, it's said the right way, the right thing, at the right time. We have a principle in our family, and it comes from a story that I read from World War II of a Jewish family separated from mom and dad. And so it was the older girl, she was in middle school, and a young brother. And they were driven together to the concentration camp. And when they got there, of course, the stress of the situation took over the older sister, and the younger brother was asking her questions. And she snapped. And they got out of the train car and they separated them, and that was the last she saw of her brother. We have a principle in our home, and my wife and I say it to each other, we have throughout times in our marriage, and we think about it with our kids, that we do not want to say things. We don't want to say anything that we wouldn't be content if it were the last thing that someone heard us say. Now, there are times that we fail that. And so when we fail that, what do? We ask for forgiveness and say, we don't talk like that around here. Please forgive me. That's not how I want you to hear me talk. The things I want you to hear me say, please forgive me. And loved ones, that's the dramatic example, but if we pull from this well of wisdom and we're constantly pursuing this well of wisdom, we will set up a safeguard so that we actually don't need to be concerned, because our first nature is to speak wisely. So may God make us people of wisdom. Would you pray with me?